Colorado wildfire roars. A red kite cuts smoke. A calm, blue-eyed CEO kneels by a coughing boy, its tail-stitched L. Mercer. Chance or blood? Smoke rolled across the cul-de-sac like an angry tide. Houses vanished behind curtains of flame-orange haze, and sirens wailed somewhere beyond the ridge. 9-year-old Eli Hart stood barefoot on the curb, one hand gripping the spool of a bright red kite that strained against the ash-thick wind. The nylon snapped and fluttered, its tail, a frayed strip of red scarf, twisting like a distress flag above the chaos. He wasn't flying it for fun. He was marking a path. Each tug of the string mapped a pocket of breathable air the firefighters had cleared for the elderly couple next door. "Follow the kite!" Eli shouted over the roar, voice hoarse but sure. He'd seen the trick once on TV, something about pilots spotting movement through smoke. It was all he had, and he refused to be helpless. Through the gray wall of heat, a black SUV nosed forward, headlights cutting thin tunnels in the haze. The door swung open, and a tall man stepped out, coatless despite the cinders. His dark hair was neatly styled even under the grit, a tailored Italian suit contrasting sharply with the soot. Designer glasses caught a glint of firelight as he scanned the street, calm, calculating, as if seeing data in the air. Landon Mercer, CEO of Sierra Link. The man whose AI was supposed to predict fire behavior, before this one outran every model. He moved toward Eli with a measured urgency, crouching to eye level. "You're holding the line, huh?" he said, voice steady and rich. "That's brave." Eli nodded, clutching the reel tighter. "They can't see. My kite's red. It's the only thing that shows." Landon's gaze followed the trembling string up into the smoke column. The tail flickered, then he froze. That scarf. Torn edge, the faint embroidery barely visible through soot. L. Mercer, his initials, his handwriting. 8 years ago, after a wildfire fundraiser, he'd left that scarf with a woman named Rachel Hart, a volunteer nurse with ash on her cheeks and stubborn hope in her eyes. He'd never seen her again. A gust pushed embers past them, forcing him back to focus. "You did the right thing," Landon said, pulling his wristwatch loose from his cuff to voice command. "Sierra Link, authenticate Mercer L01, activate drone Convoy 9. Overhead, faint hums cut through the wind. Drones, his drones, appeared like silver hawks, dropping small canisters that hissed cool, filtered air. "Step back," he told Eli gently. "You keep the kite up. I'll handle the rest." Around them, seniors coughed in relief as fresh air spilled across the street. Landon rerouted power pods to the school gym, his voice calm, decisive. "Deploy oxygen concentrators to Station 2. Mark this zone green for evac." People moved because his confidence made them believe. And in that moment, the man who once built machines to save lives found himself facing the life he might have left behind. Behind him, a volunteer's voice broke through the smoke. "Eli! Eli, where are you?" The boy turned. Landon followed his gaze, and the world seemed to still. Rachel Hart stood at the fire line, smoke-streaked and breathless, staring at the man she never thought she'd see again. For a heartbeat, the wildfire's roar dulled beneath the rush of old memories. Rachel's eyes, still that stormy hazel that once pulled him in, locked with Landon's. The world shrank to a single, breathless instant between them, stitched together by smoke and the trembling kite line. She looked exactly as he remembered, only stronger. Soot clung to her cheeks, her hair tied back beneath a volunteer's bandana. In one hand she held a medical satchel. The other shook slightly, not from fear, but disbelief. "Landon?" The word barely formed, carried by the wind. He didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind raced through the impossible. The red scarf tail, Eli's face, the faint shape of his own initials sewn in the thread. Then the boy coughed again, a harsh, raw sound that snapped them both back into motion. "Rachel," Landon said, voice low but commanding. We need to move, now. The south wind's shifting. Your triage tent won't hold. She hesitated, every muscle torn between staying for her patients and protecting her son. There are still people by the fence. I've already got Sierra Link drones covering them, Landon interrupted, gesturing skyward. 2 clean air modules dropped near the Ridge Road, and the bus is inbound for the evac zone. He took her hand, not as a CEO giving orders, but as the man who once knew her heartbeat. Get in the van. I'll guide you through. Eli blinked between them, confused but trusting. He'd never seen his mother's eyes so wide, her voice so unsure. Mom, you know him? Rachel's throat tightened. We worked together, a long time ago. Landon opened the van door and helped them in, his movements brisk but gentle. Inside, the filtered air hummed with life. The noise outside dulled to a distant, angry roar. Eli slumped against his mother's shoulder, still clutching the kite reel. Landon adjusted the air valve, watching the boy's breathing steady. Nice work with that kite, he said softly. It probably saved lives. Eli grinned faintly. Mom says helping is the only thing that matters. Rachel's gaze flickered to him, torn between pride and old hurt. He gets that from you, she said quietly, then looked away as if she'd said too much. For a long minute, only the drone of purifiers filled the silence. Landon kept his tone even, professional. Sierra Link's network is expanding the safe zone. I'll stay till everyone's clear. Then he added, more personal now, Rachel, I need you to trust me, just until this fire passes. Her expression softened, though pain still rimmed her eyes. You always said that, she murmured. Then you disappeared. He turned toward her, sincerity replacing his practiced composure. If I disappeared, it wasn't by choice. Before she could reply, static crackled through the comms. Fire line breach near Canyon Ridge, a responder barked. Wind, jump, east flank. We're losing containment. Landon met her gaze, decision already forming in his mind. I have to go back out there. Keep the doors sealed and don't lose that kite. Landon, Rachel started, but the van door had already closed. Outside, the inferno flared brighter, painting his dark suit in flickering orange. The CEO straightened, tightening his tie, eyes sharp behind the glasses. He spoke into his wrist again, calm in the chaos. Sierra Link, deploy remaining modules, prioritize evac route Delta, mark corridor by visual beacon, red kite signal. High above the smoke, Eli's kite trembled but held. Its red tail, his mother's scarf, cut against the gray sky like a promise refusing to burn. Ash drifted like snow as Landon strode back into the open, jacket whipping in the wind. The sky burned an angry orange. Roofs crackled under a rain of embers. Every sense screamed danger, but his focus locked on the kite line slicing upward through the smoke, a trembling thread of red and hope. At the van, Eli's small hand still clutched the reel through the cracked window. Landon gave a reassuring nod before turning toward the smoke corridor. He had work to do. From his wrist, he activated the Sierra Link live grid. Augmented overlays flickered across his glasses. Temperature spikes, wind shifts, structural hotspots. But then, something else caught his eye. A short pattern stitched into the kite's tail. Uneven letters, hand-sewn in red thread. L. Mercer. The fabric was more than a scarf. It was his scarf. He remembered the night perfectly. 8 years ago, a wildfire benefit in Fort Collins. The air had smelled of cedar and new beginnings. Rachel had worked triage then too, her hands raw from dressing burns. He'd wrapped his scarf around her shoulders before dawn, promising to write. He'd written dozens of times. Each message came back undelivered. Now the truth flickered like firelight. She hadn't left. She'd been cut off. And somehow, the boy clutching that kite, his age, his jawline, the same blue hue circling his irises, made everything tighten in Landon's chest. Focus, he whispered to himself. He opened a line to command ops. Mercer to Control. I'm at Sector 7. Begin immediate airdrop of filtration drones on this grid. Mark beacon on red kite visual. Authenticate Mercer signature, level prime. Confirmed, sir, came the reply. Drone 9 en route. Above, metallic wings shimmered through haze. Pods hissed open, spraying oxygen mist that danced like silver rain. The street came alive with motion. Neighbors guiding elders, medics fanning stretchers toward clearer air. Landon moved among them, calm, unhurried, his voice grounding the panic. Keep left of the blue line, he directed a firefighter team. Sensors show cleaner flow here. When a woman stumbled, he caught her arm, steadying her without breaking stride. His designer shoes were coated in ash now, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. The CEO had vanished. What remained was a man refusing to let anyone fall. Back at the van, Rachel watched through the windshield, jaw tight. She wanted to hate him, wanted to hold on to the anger that had kept her upright through nights alone, but seeing him there, shouting orders and saving strangers, stirred something she didn't expect. Recognition. He hadn't changed. He still did before he explained. The comms crackled again. Mercer, we've got trapped volunteers near the old barn. Fire's closing fast. Send coordinates, Landon ordered. Then, to himself, no one gets left behind today. He turned toward the ridge, the glow of flame painting his silhouette against the stormed sky. The wind howled, tossing sparks around his head like a crown of embers. In that surreal moment, Eli's voice carried faintly through the window, small, determined. Keep the kite up, Mom. He said it helps the drones find people. Rachel gripped the boy's shoulders, trembling. The kite line vibrated in her hands, warm from friction. The red scarf flared once, catching a rogue ember, and for a terrifying second began to burn. She gasped, grabbing the water bottle beside her and dousing it. Steam hissed. The tail darkened, but held. Outside, Landon looked back just in time to see the flare die out. Their eyes met through the smoke, hers frantic, his steady, full of something unspoken but undeniable. He pressed a palm briefly to his chest, then to the sky, signaling acknowledgement. Rachel exhaled shakily, clutching Eli closer. In the distance, another explosion boomed, propane tanks igniting. Landon turned toward it, determination hardening his features. Not this time, he murmured, stepping into the fire's path. The blast echoed down the canyon, shaking the ground beneath his polished shoes. Landon steadied himself, dust and ash clinging to his dark suit. A wall of heat shimmered ahead, orange, gold, alive. He lifted his wrist again, voice steady despite the chaos. Sierra Link, plot shortest approach to volunteer coordinates. Override terrain restrictions. Drones zipped overhead, flashing blue through the gray. Their hum grew louder, comforting in its precision. Landon broke into a jog, smoke biting his lungs, mind locked on the task. Each step through the haze stripped away another layer of the corporate armor. The CEO who spoke in metrics, the strategist who measured outcomes. Now, only purpose remained. He reached the old barn, a half-collapsed relic at the edge of the ridge. 2 volunteers were pinned beneath fallen beams, coughing, barely conscious. Landon crouched, voice calm but firm. You're going to be fine. I'm Landon Mercer, Sierra Link. I've got you. He used a fallen iron rod as leverage, muscles flexing, teeth clenched. For a man known for boardrooms and patents, he moved like someone who'd trained for this his entire life. One beam shifted, another cracked. Finally, with a grunt, he freed them both. Go. Head for the red kite. Follow the clean corridor. Don't stop. They stumbled away, half limping, half running. He stayed until they vanished into the smoky distance before turning back toward the cul-de-sac. By the time he returned, Rachel was outside the van again, kneeling beside a man with burns across his arms. Her gloves were melted at the fingertips, face streaked with sweat and ash. She didn't see him approach until he dropped beside her with a clean bandage roll and an emergency patch kit. She froze. "You're still here." "Wasn't done yet," Landon replied quietly. "You'd have scolded me if I left." A flash of reluctant humor passed through her eyes, but it vanished under the weight of years unsaid. She worked silently for a moment before asking, "How long have you been in Colorado?" 3 years. Headquarters moved after the drought crisis." He met her gaze, blue eyes soft but unflinching. "Rachel, I didn't ignore you. I never received a single message." Her hands trembled as she tied the gauze. "I sent dozens. Emails, calls, letters. Everything came back undeliverable. You could have found me if you wanted. I tried." He reached for his phone, swiping open an encrypted file. "When the first message bounced, my assistant said you'd left the Relief Foundation. Then she—" He stopped himself, frowning. "No, this isn't the place." Rachel shook her head. "No, it's not." She rose, eyes glistening through the soot. "Right now, there's a kid in that van who needs both of us alive. We talk after." Landon stood too, expression tightening with respect. "Agreed." He pressed a small beacon into her palm. "Signal booster. If comms die, press and hold. It'll call my drones." She nodded, pocketing it. The moment was brief, professional, and yet charged with everything they hadn't said in 8 years. Eli cracked open the van door, eyes wide. "Mom, the wind's changing." Both turned toward the ridge. A sudden downdraft pushed smoke sideways, flames crawling toward the lower lots. Landon scanned the horizon, lips pressed thin. "We've got 30 minutes before this corridor collapses." Rachel's heart pounded. "Then we start moving people again." He smiled faintly, just as he used to before diving into impossible problems. "You always did like giving me deadlines." Despite herself, Rachel smiled back, tired, wary, but real. Landon tapped his wrist again. "Sierra Link, new directive. Reinforce AirPods at zones 4 through 8. Prioritize the cul-de-sac exit." Then, to Rachel, "We're not losing anyone tonight." As he strode toward the street, the red kite pulled higher, straining against the turbulent air, its tail glowing faintly in the firelight as if the scarf refused to let the wind take it. Rachel followed his gaze and whispered under her breath, "Neither am I." The air thickened again as smoke rolled downhill, swallowing the neighborhood in a gray, shifting fog. Flames flared where wooden fences met the gusts, and the crackle of fire echoed like a relentless drum. Landon moved through it like a conductor in a storm. One command, one signal, one decisive motion at a time. "Activate corridor beacons," he ordered through his wrist mic. "Mark civilian convoy routes and sync to the red kite's GPS." Tiny blue lights shimmered to life along the street edges, cutting faint paths through the darkness. The Sierra Link drones formed a synchronized line overhead, spraying clean air mist that shimmered like rainfall. Within minutes, the panic began to fade. Movement returned to the crowd. Inside the van, Rachel watched through the windshield, one hand resting on Eli's shoulder. The boy's small chest rose and fell in the rhythm with the hum of the air filters. Landon's figure glowed in the haze, a dark silhouette haloed by emergency strobes, his tie loose, shirt half open, but his composure unbroken. Rachel exhaled shakily. "He still does it," she murmured. "Does what?" Eli asked, voice raspy but curious. "He leads like the world isn't falling apart," she said softly, "even when it is." Outside, Landon crouched beside a rescue map projected onto the asphalt, cross-checking coordinates. "We'll push evac east toward the school. Route west is blocked. Flare-ups near the bridge." A firefighter nodded. "Copy that, Mercer. Never thought I'd take orders from a tech CEO. Landon gave a quick half smile. Today, titles don't matter. Breathing does. His tone carried the weight of quiet authority, the kind that made people believe even when fear clawed at their throats. He turned, spotting Rachel stepping toward him through the smoke. "Rachel!" he called, removing his glasses to wipe the ash from the lenses. His eyes, sharp, clear blue despite the grime, met hers. You and Eli stay in the van until the first convoy clears. The wind could swing again any minute. She shook her head, standing firm. You need medical triage here. I'm staying. He hesitated only a moment before nodding, reading the resolve in her face. Then stay close. If visibility drops, follow my voice. Rachel bent to check a nearby burn victim, her hands moving with practiced care. Landon stood beside her, rolling up his sleeves, helping stabilize a portable oxygen pod. Their shoulders brushed once, an accidental contact that sent both glancing away. A few feet away, Eli cracked the window, red kite still in hand. "Mr. Mercer!" he shouted, holding it higher. "The wind's picking up again!" Landon glanced back, a hint of a smile cutting through the soot. "Keep it steady, Captain. That kite's our North Star right now." Eli grinned proudly, and Rachel's heart clenched at the easy warmth between them, the same calm she'd once fallen for. But before she could speak, Landon's earpiece buzzed with static. "Control to Mercer. Urgent. Wildfire shift at Sector 6. Drones losing signal. We're seeing erratic spoofing in command frequencies." Landon's expression hardened. "Spoofing?" "Yes, sir. Unauthorized override attempts. Looks internal." His pulse quickened. Only a handful of people could access Sierra Link's encrypted drone system. Someone was tampering, with lives at stake. Rachel noticed his sudden tension. "What's wrong?" He met her eyes, quiet but resolute. "There's interference, someone trying to hijack our system. It's coming from inside Sierra Link." Smoke thickened again, swallowing their outlines in gray. The kite's red tail snapped wildly overhead, pulling at its string. Landon's jaw tightened as he tapped his wrist and said evenly, "Lock network. Authenticate Mercer Prime key only." For a brief, heart-stopping moment, the drones hesitated, then steadied, lights returning to formation. Relief rippled through him, though the question burned underneath. Who would dare sabotage a rescue? Rachel stepped closer. "This isn't just about the fire, is it?" He exhaled slowly. "Not anymore." In the distance, another siren wailed, a low, drawn-out cry swallowed by smoke, and as embers swirled like red snow, the three of them stood beneath the trembling kite, unaware that the truth they'd buried years ago was about to resurface in the most dangerous way. The wind surged, ripping through the cul-de-sac with a low, guttural roar. "Mom, the kite's slipping!" Eli's voice cracked through the smoke. Rachel ran toward the van, eyes stinging. The red kite whipped violently against the gusts, its tail, a frayed strip of scarf, snapping like flame. The string burned against the boy's small palms. Landon was there in seconds, his tall frame cutting through the gray haze. "Got it," he said, gripping the line beside Eli's hands. The scarf twisted once, then caught steady again, floating high enough for the drones to track. He looked down at the boy. "You've got a good grip, Captain. Don't let that wind tell you who's in charge." Eli coughed but smiled faintly. "I'm not letting go." "Good. Neither am I." Rachel reached them, hair clinging to her soot-streaked face. "The wind's changing again. We need to move these people out now." Landon nodded, scanning the horizon. His glasses flickered as data streamed across the lenses. Wind vectors, oxygen levels, drone telemetry. The east corridor's collapsing. We have 20 minutes before the next flare line cuts off the highway. "Then what?" she asked. "Then we make another one." He adjusted his wrist interface, syncing to Sierra Link's main control. "Route power to school zone generators. Deploy portable shelters at Clearview Elementary. Override county protocols." The line crackled. "Sir, that's a Class A authorization. Requires board approval." "You have it," Landon replied flatly. "Under emergency statute. And if the board wants to complain, they can do it after everyone's breathing again." The channel went silent then. "Understood, Mr. Mercer." Rachel stared at him. "You're still the same. Acting first, explaining later." He turned to her, blue eyes reflecting the flames. "And you're still the one who makes me second-guess it." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackle of burning trees and Eli's shallow breathing. Rachel broke the silence. You think this sabotage has something to do with us? Landon hesitated. Someone spoofed my credentials. That means they wanted to stop Sierra Link's relief response, or embarrass me in the middle of it. He looked at her, voice low. 8 years ago, I got anonymous warnings to stay away from you. They came from inside my company. Rachel's stomach turned. So you thought I sent them? I didn't know what to think, he admitted, tone softer. But tonight, it's happening again. The same encrypted signature. She crossed her arms, holding back emotion. You built a world where everyone answers to you, Landon. Maybe someone's tired of that. Maybe, he said quietly. But they're playing with people's lives now. A sudden radio burst interrupted them. Mercer, drone signal drop at Zone 5. Someone's overriding manual control. Landon cursed under his breath. Lock it out, he ordered. Hard disconnect. Run a forensic trace. He glanced at Eli, still holding the kite. Eli, listen to me. If the wind gets worse, let go of the string and get in the van. Promise me. The boy looked up, eyes fierce. But the kite's helping people see us. Landon crouched to his level, smoke swirling around them. And that's brave, what you're doing. But you can't help anyone if you can't breathe. Heroes know when to hold on and when to move. Rachel's breath caught. The way Landon said it, gentle, protective, instinctive, made her heart ache. He didn't know, not yet, but every word came out like a father's. Then the ground trembled, a low rumble rising through the asphalt. Landon's head snapped toward the ridge. Gas main, he muttered. If that line blows, it'll take out half the block. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. How far? Too close. He scanned his display. 70 yards. Secondary fires creeping toward it. He hit his comm. Mercer to control. Deploy suppression drones on Vector 312. Now. Sir, the interference just spiked. Someone's jamming. Static swallowed the rest. Rachel's voice broke through the noise. Landon, we can't wait for tech. We need people moving now. He looked at her for a long beat, then nodded, decision snapping into place. You're right. He sprinted to the nearest truck, swinging open the door and grabbing the loudspeaker. All evacuees, follow the red kite corridor. Keep moving east toward the school lot. Move now. His voice carried through the chaos, strong and commanding. People obeyed. Doors slammed, engines roared, wheels crunched over gravel. The red kite danced above it all, still tethered to the boy's trembling hands, still visible through the shifting smoke. Rachel helped guide the last group toward the road. Her heart pounded, but when she turned back, Landon was still there, standing in the middle of the street, suit torn, ash coating his hair, eyes fixed on the horizon. Behind him, a faint explosion flared at the ridge, fire curling into the sky. The concussion hit seconds later, knocking them both backward. Landon! She screamed. He stumbled to his knees, coughing, waving off her hands. I'm fine, he rasped. But that gas main's breached. We have minutes, maybe less. Rachel glanced at Eli, terrified. What do we do? Landon's gaze flicked from the fire to the kite still trembling above. We finish what he started. He turned toward the van, eyes blazing. Rachel, get everyone clear. I'll hold the line. She caught his arm, voice shaking. You can't save everyone alone. He looked back at her, steady, blue eyes fierce through the smoke. I'm not alone. And, as another wave of fire lit the horizon, the red kite pulled against the dark sky like a living heartbeat, defying the inferno that tried to swallow it. The roar of the gas line igniting was like thunder tearing open the night. The blast wave pushed through the cul-de-sac, rattling car frames and shattering porch lights. Landon braced against the van door, shielding Eli and Rachel with his body as glass rained from a nearby window. Heat surged across his back, a sharp reminder of how close they were to losing everything. Go! He barked once the rumble subsided. Get the convoy moving now! Rachel grabbed the radio. All evac vehicles follow the kite corridor east. Don't stop for supplies, just move. Outside, Fire rolled toward the ridge, chasing oxygen like a living predator. Landon tapped his wrist, but his display flickered again. Signal loss, total blackout. Someone had hijacked the Sierra Link channel completely. "System's gone," he muttered, trying to override. "Someone's locked me out." Rachel turned sharply. "Locked you out of your own company?" He met her eyes, voice taut. "This isn't just about control, it's about sabotage. Someone wants this operation to fail publicly." She stared at him, breath catching. "You mean someone in your own board?" Before he could answer, a voice crackled through the emergency radio. Distorted, mechanical, but unmistakably human. "Mr. Mercer, impressive show. Shame about the optics when this all goes wrong." Landon's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" Static, then the same voice. "You built Sierra Link to save people. But you forgot. It was built by people too, people you left behind." The transmission cut. Rachel frowned, heart hammering. What does that mean? Landon didn't answer right away. He stared into the wall of fire ahead, the reflection burning in his glasses. Finally, quietly, "It means this was planned long before tonight." The wind picked up again, pushing smoke sideways, revealing faint silhouettes in the distance. Seniors stumbling along the sidewalk, guided only by the flicker of Eli's red kite. The boy's small hands clung to the string, the tail catching the firelight like a bleeding ribbon. Landon's jaw set. "Rachel, get him into the van. Keep the engine running." She shook her head. "Not without you." "Rachel, you think I'm letting you play hero again?" She snapped, voice trembling. "You already disappeared once without a word. I'm not doing that twice." Her words hit harder than the smoke. He hesitated, guilt flashing through his blue eyes. "I didn't walk away," he said quietly. "Someone cut the bridge between us." Rachel's throat tightened. "Then rebuild it." Another explosion boomed from the far end of the street, scattering debris. Landon grabbed her hand and pulled her behind the van for cover. Metal shards clanged off the asphalt. The ground vibrated under them as propane tanks ignited in a garage. Eli's voice rose above the chaos. "Mr. Mercer, the kite, it's still up." Landon looked. Through the dense orange haze, the red kite still floated, its tail glowing like a flare against the darkness. The boy's knuckles were white from holding the reel, arms trembling, but he refused to let go. "That kite's the only thing keeping the drones synced," Landon said. "If it drops, we lose visual tracking." Rachel's breath came fast. "Then you'll have to guide them manually." Landon nodded once, mind already racing. He reconnected his watch to his backup AI core, bypassing Sierra Link's compromised network. The screen flickered to life with a faint hum. "System override. Mercer direct protocol," he commanded. The device confirmed in a clipped tone. "Manual guidance engaged. 5 drones available. Tracking beacon, red kite." "Good," he said under his breath. He rose from cover, scanning the inferno like a soldier reading a map of light and wind. His voice carried steady authority. "All right, listen up. We guide the drones from here. Rachel, you're my eyes on the evac line. Eli, you're my compass. Keep that kite dead center. If it drops, yell." Eli saluted with shaking hands. "Yes, sir." Rachel positioned herself by the van, one hand gripping her medical bag, the other holding a flashlight aimed toward the safe route. "Convoy's ready when you are." Landon inhaled the acrid smoke and lifted his wrist, syncing the drones to the kite's signal. On his display, 5 blue dots aligned with the red marker that represented Eli's kite. The heat distortion made everything shimmer, but the pattern held. "Drone team, follow Vector Delta 35, he commanded. "Activate spotlight mode. Paint the route green." Above, faint white beams broke through the gray, cutting swaths of visibility across the smoke. The crowd of evacuees cheered faintly as a glowing corridor appeared through the haze, green light against orange destruction. Rachel's heart caught in her throat. "It's working!" Landon exhaled, finally letting a hint of relief cross his face. "No, we did." Then the radio on his wrist buzzed again, one last message. Cold, mocking. "Impressive recovery, Mercer, but every hero burns out eventually." He froze. The voice wasn't distorted this time. It was clear, familiar. Rachel noticed his stillness. "Who was that?" Landon's jaw tightened. "Someone who used to call me partner." Another tremor shook the ground, scattering sparks. The drones wavered, then stabilized. "Let's move," he ordered. "We'll deal with ghosts later." As the convoy began rolling toward the lighted corridor, the red kite climbed higher, steady and defiant. The scarf at its tail fluttered wildly, its embroidered initials catching faintly in the firelight. L. Mercer. Rachel saw it and went pale. That was the scarf he'd left her 8 years ago, the night he never came back. The moment Rachel saw those letters shimmer through the haze, her knees nearly buckled. L. Mercer. The same delicate stitching she had traced with her fingers the night he left, when she'd fallen asleep believing he'd call in the morning, and woke to nothing but silence. Her hand gripped the van door for balance. "That scarf? How did Eli get it?" Landon turned, startled by her tone. He followed her gaze up to the trembling red tail illuminated by drone light. His breath caught. "That's mine. The scarf from the fundraiser," Rachel finished hoarsely. "I kept it after you never called." The air between them thickened. Fire on one side, memory on the other. Embers drifted past like the ghosts of words neither had said. "I did call," Landon said, voice low but fierce. "Dozens of times. Every message bounced back. Your number was flagged as inactive." She stared at him, disbelief flickering with something more fragile, hope. "I emailed you. I wrote. You replied once. Cold. 2 lines telling me not to reach out again." He shook his head. "That wasn't me. Someone intercepted us." His blue eyes hardened. "And whoever's jamming the drones now, they're using the same encryption key, the same pattern." Rachel pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "You think it's the same person who split us apart?" "I don't think," he said, jaw tightening. "I know." The ground vibrated again, a heavy boom from the ridge where propane tanks had ignited earlier. Landon grabbed her wrist, steadying her. "We'll talk when this fire's out, not before." "But Eli is safe," he said firmly, glancing toward the van where the boy still held the kite reel steady, his small face lit by green drone light. "Your son's brave." Rachel swallowed. "Our son." The world seemed to stop. Even the fire's roar dimmed in his ears. He turned slowly, eyes searching hers for any trace of a lie. "What did you just say?" She hesitated, voice shaking but resolute. "You didn't just leave, Landon. You left without knowing. I found out 2 months after the fundraiser. I tried to reach you. I tried everything. When the messages stopped, I thought you'd made your choice." Landon's lips parted, 1,000 thoughts colliding behind his calm facade. For once, words failed him. "Eli is mine?" Rachel nodded once, eyes wet but steady. "And I swore I'd raise him without depending on the man who vanished." The sound that left him was somewhere between a breath and a prayer. 8 years, he murmured, almost to himself. 8 years, and he was right here. Rachel blinked through tears. "You'd have found us if you'd really wanted to." "I did look," he said, a flash of anger breaking through his calm. "For months, but I was told you'd moved overseas. That you'd married." "By who?" His expression darkened. "My COO at the time, Daniel Cross, the same man who signed off on those shadow filters we traced tonight." Rachel's heart raced. "He was the one behind the emails?" "Behind everything," Landon said bitterly. "He sabotaged my private accounts after I fired him for insider trading. He must have forged the shutdown messages, too. The same signatures embedded in tonight's interference." Eli's small voice cut through the tension. "Mom, Mr. Mercer, the fire's getting closer." The moment snapped. Duty reclaimed him. "Rachel, get Eli in the van. We'll follow the convoy out." But she didn't move. She watched him. This man who had once been all brilliance and distance, now torn open by the truth. "You're not going back into that fire," she said. "I have to," Landon replied. "The last cluster of drones is offline. Without them, the path collapses." "You have a son now," she said quietly. "Don't make him lose you before he even knows." He paused, the words cutting deep. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I'll finish the job from the van feed. We'll stay together." Rachel exhaled shakily, relief breaking through exhaustion. Inside the van, Eli looked between them, puzzled but alert. "What's going on?" Landon slid into the driver's seat, eyes on the horizon. "Something I should have known a long time ago," he said softly, glancing at Rachel through the mirror. "Something worth fighting for." Rachel's eyes met his, unforgiving yet full of everything she'd once loved in him. He tapped the wrist display again. "Sierra Link manual drive engaged. Drones. Hold the corridor until the last vehicle clears." Outside, the flames receded just enough to reveal a faint silhouette of the road ahead, glowing green under the drone light. Eli's kite danced against the smoke, pulling higher, its red tail burning brighter than the fire itself. Landon reached out and steadied the reel in Eli's hands, his own fingers trembling slightly. "Hold it steady, son," he said, the words slipping out naturally, reverently. Eli's eyes widened, but he didn't ask. He just nodded. "I've got it." Rachel's hand brushed Landon's arm, wordless but certain. And as the convoy rolled forward through the glowing corridor, flanked by flame, smoke, and the unyielding red kite above, Landon Mercer realized that the boy guiding them through the inferno was not just a symbol of survival. He was his legacy. The fire line thinned as the convoy crawled down the narrow highway. Drones hovered like sentinels overhead, their blue beams cutting through the haze, each one still tracking the red kite that bobbed in the wind above the lead van. Inside, Landon gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale, his jaw locked in focus. The radio crackled with updates from Sierra Link Control. Patchy, distorted, but enough to guide him through. Eli sat between them, the kite reel anchored to his lap, his small hands blistered from the friction burns. "It's still up there," he whispered, watching the string tremble. "We're almost out, right?" Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft but steady. "Almost, sweetheart. Just hold on a little longer." Landon's gaze flicked toward her. In the green-tinged light, soot smudged her cheeks, and exhaustion lined her eyes. Yet even now, she moved with quiet precision, checking vitals, monitoring oxygen levels, comforting whoever needed it most. 8 years had changed her, but not the way that mattered. She still led with instinct, heart first. He wanted to say something, to explain, to apologize, but another burst of static interrupted the thought. "Mercer, we've traced the interference," a voice announced through the comms. It was Priya, Sierra Link's chief systems engineer. Her tone was clipped, urgent. "It's coming from one of our own relay trucks. The ID tags match a unit deployed by your former COO, Daniel Cross." Landon's hands tightened around the wheel. "Location? North Ridge. He's broadcasting a shadow protocol, rerouting drone fuel pods toward the fire front. If it hits the tanks, the blast will cut off every exit." Rachel's head snapped up. "How far is that from us?" "Too close," Landon said grimly. "If he triggers it, we'll lose the whole corridor." Eli's fingers twitched around the reel. "Can't the drones stop him?" "They can," Landon said, eyes flicking to his display. "But he's jamming the override. He knows exactly how this system works. I built it with him." Rachel's voice trembled. "Then you have to outthink him." He turned toward her, meeting her gaze in the flickering light. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." He tapped a quick command sequence on his wristwatch, initiating a bypass of the Sierra Link AI core. "If I can route control through the kite beacon's GPS signal, I can link the drones to Eli's position instead of the corrupted hub." "Wait, through his kite?" she asked. Stunned, he nodded. "It's pure line-of-sight telemetry. Analog signal. Too primitive for Cross to hack. Rachel frowned. That's risky. If the kite falls, then everything burns. Landon finished quietly. The realization settled like a physical weight between them. Rachel turned toward her son, who sat with wide eyes but unwavering focus. Eli, she said softly, can you keep that kite steady for a little longer? He nodded without hesitation. I can do it, Mom. Landon glanced back at him, his heart catching on the boy's calm resolve. You're stronger than most grown men I know. Eli grinned faintly. Mom says when you're scared, you can still be brave. You just do it anyway. A flicker of pride and something deeper passed through Landon's chest. She's right. He keyed in the last override command. All right. Let's give this fire something it can't swallow. Above them, the drones pivoted mid-air, reorienting in perfect formation. A grid of green light expanded outward, sealing the convoy's escape route in a tunnel of clarity and air. Sparks burst harmlessly against the drone shield as the wind howled. Rachel exhaled shakily. It's working. Then the comm line hissed again. Cross's voice dripping with venom. You always thought you could fix everything yourself, Landon. But you forgot. Fire doesn't negotiate. Landon's hand froze on the dashboard. Daniel, if you're hearing this, stop before you kill people. You wanted credit? Fine. You'll have your name on the report, but not as a savior. Cross laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. You stole my company, my patents, my future. Tonight, I take back my legacy. Rachel leaned closer to the mic. You're taking lives, not legacy. The line went dead. A second later, the horizon flashed, blinding white, then orange. The ridge erupted. The blast wave hit like a fist. The van lurched sideways, tires screeching on melted asphalt. Landon fought the wheel, muscles straining. Rachel threw her arm across Eli's chest, shielding him. Outside, drones shuddered but held formation, buffering most of the debris. The kite bucked wildly, the string hissing through Eli's palms. I can't hold it, he gasped. Landon reached across, gripping the reel with him. You're not alone this time. We hold it together. Smoke billowed past the windshield. The green light corridor flickered but didn't collapse. One by one, the convoy's taillights pierced the haze ahead. Still moving, still alive. When the tremors subsided, Landon finally exhaled. We're through the blast radius, he said, voice rough. He's gone. The relay's offline. Rachel's eyes were glassy with tears. And the evacuees? All safe, he said. Every one of them. Eli sagged in his seat, exhausted but smiling. The kite didn't break. Landon turned to him, his voice quiet with awe. No, son, it didn't. He looked out at the horizon, where faint dawn light began to rise through the thinning smoke. Behind them, the inferno still burned. But ahead, green light stretched unbroken toward the foothills. For the first time in years, Landon felt the pull of something brighter than ambition, something he'd lost and just begun to find again. Rachel reached over, resting a soot-streaked hand over his. You saved them, she said softly. He turned his hand upward, lacing his fingers through hers. No, he said, glancing at Eli's sleeping form. We did. Outside, the kite drifted higher, its red tail catching the new light of morning. It wasn't just a marker anymore, it was proof of what could survive the fire. The smoke began to thin as dawn broke across the foothills. The first golden light of morning stretched over blackened treetops, catching on drifting ash and turning it almost beautiful. Behind them, the flames that had consumed the night were losing their fury. Ahead, the faint green shimmer of Sierra Link's drone corridor still glowed, a bridge between ruin and survival. The convoy slowed near the edge of the safe zone, a broad, sloping valley that had once been farmland. Fire crews waited there, directing evacuees into medical tents. When the van rolled to a stop, the air finally felt breathable again. Rachel shut off the engine and leaned her head against the steering wheel, trembling. They had made it out. Landon stepped out first, the gravel crunching under his soot-black shoes. His dark suit was torn at the sleeve, tie hanging loose, face streaked with ash. But he stood tall, scanning the horizon as if still processing the fact that it was over. Rachel climbed out with Eli, steadying him. The boy's hands were raw and blistered, but he refused to let go of the kite reel until Landon crouched beside him. "Here," Landon said gently, fingers brushing the frayed scarf tail that still fluttered in the dawn breeze. "Let's tie it off. It's earned a rest." Eli nodded solemnly, letting the string coil between his fingers. "It stayed up the whole time." Landon smiled faintly, voice quiet. "So did you." He looked up at the red tail, his old scarf. The one he'd left years ago now turned into the symbol that had saved them all. For a moment, his throat tightened. That piece of fabric had survived everything. The fire, the wind, the lost years. Maybe that was why he couldn't stop staring at it. Rachel joined him, her voice low. He wouldn't let go, not once, even when the heat got too close. Landon's gaze softened. "He's got your courage." Then, after a pause, "and your heart." Rachel studied him, trying to reconcile the man she'd known, the confident fundraiser who disappeared into boardrooms, with the one kneeling now, hands trembling slightly, eyes raw with unguarded emotion. She whispered, "You really didn't know, did you?" He shook his head. If I'd known, I would have been there, every day." Tears stung her eyes and she blinked them away, not trusting her voice. Nearby, the lead firefighter approached, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Mercer," he said, nodding in recognition. "Your drones saved a lot of people tonight. County Command wants to coordinate next steps with Sierra Link once we stabilize the fire line." Landon straightened, slipping back into calm precision. "They'll have full access to all safety data and drone telemetry within the hour," he replied. "And we'll fund clean air shelters through the recovery phase." The firefighter blinked. Sir, that's beyond what's required." Landon's gaze flicked briefly toward Rachel and Eli before he answered, his voice carrying quiet conviction. "After tonight, required doesn't begin to cover what matters." When the man left, Rachel turned to him. "You still talk like a CEO, even when your world's on fire." He gave a small, self-conscious smile. "That's because I built Sierra Link for control, for knowing what happens next. But tonight, it was a 9-year-old with a kite who showed me how to lead." Eli looked up, grinning shyly. "Mom says good leaders help people breathe easier." Landon smiled. "Then she's been leading longer than I have." For a long moment, the three of them stood there, the boy between them, the red kite lifting gently in the clean dawn wind. The fires still smoldered in the distance, but their light no longer felt threatening. It felt like the closing of a chapter. Rachel's phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her back. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "County Press Office," she said. "They're asking for a statement." Landon's expression hardened, but his tone stayed calm. "They'll want a headline, something dramatic. Something about Sierra Link's CEO saving the town?" He met her eyes, firm but gentle. "No, this isn't about me. Tell them the truth. A boy with a red kite helped guide an entire neighborhood out of the fire, and Sierra Link just followed his lead." Rachel stared at him for a beat, her breath catching. That humility, so unlike the man she'd once accused of caring more about optics than people, felt like its own kind of redemption. When she turned away to take the call, Landon watched her with quiet awe. There were no boardrooms here, no cameras, no applause. Just the sound of wind tugging at the kite string and the faint hum of his drones landing one by one around the valley. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. Eli tugged his sleeve. "Mr. Mercer, what happens now?" Landon knelt, meeting the boy's eyes. "Now?" he said softly. "Now we make sure something like this never happens again. And maybe I get to know the kid who saved half the town." Eli tilted his head. "You mean me?" Landon smiled. "Yeah, you." Rachel returned, tucking her phone away. "They'll run it your way," she said. Then, quieter, And the county wants to partner with Sierra Link for future emergency systems. Good, he said. We'll make it permanent. A Fireline program, public data, open access, full funding for resilience zones. You really mean that? He looked back toward the smoldering ridge. I do. From now on, no one waits for help that doesn't come. The morning wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of smoke and pine. Eli released the last bit of string, letting the kite drift higher. Its red tail shimmered in the sunlight, bright against the pale blue sky. Landon reached for Rachel's hand. We'll need to talk. About everything. About him. About us. Rachel hesitated, then laced her fingers through his. We will, but not today. Today's for breathing. He nodded, eyes glinting in the new light. Then let's start there. Together they watched the red kite climb into the calm Colorado sky, its tail stitched with his name, its flight powered by the hands of the boy who had unknowingly carried both their legacies through fire and smoke. For the first time, Landon Mercer wasn't thinking about control or redemption. He was simply thinking about home. By mid-morning, the valley shimmered with sunlight breaking through the last wisps of smoke. Fire crews moved through the ash fields, checking embers, spraying hot spots. The chaos of the night had cooled into something quieter, a raw, aching calm that carried both loss and survival. Landon stood at the edge of the relief camp beside a row of folding tables stacked with bottled water and masks. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt rolled at the sleeves. The prestigious watch that had once symbolized his control ticked faintly under a streak of soot. County officials were already converging, some shaking his hand, others thrusting microphones toward him. He kept his tone even, answering briefly, keeping the focus on the evacuees. When someone asked whether Sierra Link's CEO had risked his life to save the town, he said only, "A child with a red kite did most of the work. I just followed the signal." Rachel watched from a few feet away, her son sitting wrapped in a blanket beside her. She could still hear his words from the night before, steady, protective, threaded with a quiet remorse she hadn't known how to answer. Seeing him now, she realized he hadn't come back for recognition. He had come back because he'd never really stopped trying. When the interviews ended, Landon walked over to them, kneeling beside Eli. "How's the hand?" Eli held up his palm, wrapped neatly in gauze. "It hurts a little, but the nurse said I was brave." "You were," Landon said. "You still are." Rachel studied him for a moment. "They'll be talking about what you did for a long time." He shook his head. "Let them talk about what we did, about how this town stood together." There was something in his tone, gentler, stripped of performance, that made her chest tighten. For years, she'd remembered him as a man too composed to ever sound uncertain. Now, for the first time, he did. "I owe you both an explanation," he said quietly, lowering his voice, "and I owe him a life I didn't know existed." Rachel looked away toward the scorched ridge where smoke still curled into the morning air. "You can't rewrite the past, Landon." "No," he said, "but I can stop letting it define the future." Before she could answer, a deputy jogged over. "Mr. Mercer, County Command's ready for your debrief." Landon nodded, then turned back to Rachel. "I'll be an hour, maybe less. I want to come back after, if you'll let me." Her expression softened. "We'll be here." As he walked away, Rachel sat beside Eli, who was using his good hand to draw shapes in the ash. He traced a kite, a winding road, and then 3 small stick figures holding the same string. "What's that one?" she asked. He smiled, shy but proud. "Us." The simplicity of it, drawn in soot, fading in seconds, hit her harder than the night's chaos ever had. She brushed a thumb across his hair, eyes stinging. A few hours later, Landon returned. His shirt was clean now, a fresh Sierra Link patch sewn on the sleeve. The look in his eyes carried both exhaustion and resolve. He carried a folded envelope in his hand. "Here," he said, offering it to Rachel. "This is a proposal, Fireline initiative. I'm making it permanent. County partnerships, state funding, private research, all under open access. No patents, no profit. Rachel blinked, stunned. You'd give that away? He smiled faintly. Some things aren't meant to be owned. She unfolded the document, scanning the short statement signed in his sharp handwriting. At the bottom there was another signature line, and he'd left it blank. For you? She asked. For us, he said simply. If you'll join. You've been on the front line longer than I have. Her breath caught. Landon, I'm not a CEO. He smiled softly. You're something better. You're trusted. The words landed like a slow, steady heartbeat between them. Eli tugged on Rachel's sleeve. Does this mean we're all going to work together? Landon crouched again, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. It means we're going to help people breathe easier, together. Rachel met his gaze, searching for any trace of the man who once vanished without a word. But there was no distance now, just quiet conviction, steady and real. She nodded. Then we'll start with rebuilding this town, he smiled. And after that, whatever you'll let me rebuild. For the first time, she didn't look away. As the sun climbed higher, crews began unloading seedlings, tiny saplings wrapped in burlap, to plant along the ridge once the soil cooled. Rachel and Eli joined the volunteers, their hands blackened again, this time with earth instead of soot. Landon joined them, sleeves rolled, tie gone, fingers pressing into the soil beside theirs. When they finished, Eli ran to the van, lifting the kite again. Can I? Rachel laughed softly. Go ahead. He launched it high. The red fabric caught the mountain wind, dancing over the valley where green began to grow again. Landon stood beside Rachel, watching it climb. We'll need to make sure the county keeps that ridge safe. It's where this all started. She smiled faintly. And where it stopped. The boy's laughter drifted through the clean air, his voice bright, echoing off the hills. Landon turned toward her, speaking low enough for only her to hear. I don't want to miss another 8 years, he said. Rachel's eyes met his. Then don't. And as the red kite soared above the recovering valley, its tail gleaming against the blue sky, Landon Mercer understood that legacy wasn't written in patents or boardrooms or headlines. It was written in the hands that held the line when everything burned. The afternoon sun stretched long and golden across the valley, washing everything in a quiet, forgiving light. The danger had passed, but its memory clung to the land. Blackened trees like charred sentinels, scorched fences bent into strange, twisted shapes. Yet everywhere people moved with quiet purpose, handing out meals, sweeping debris, carrying supplies. Life, as it always did, was finding its way back. Landon stood near the base of a burned oak, sleeves rolled, hair tousled, the faint scent of smoke still clinging to him. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Reporters, board members, even a White House liaison. But for once, he ignored it all. His attention was fixed on Rachel and Eli. They were kneeling in the dirt beside a volunteer team, planting new saplings in a blackened patch of soil. Eli's small hands were steady, pressing the earth gently around the roots. Rachel guided him with patient warmth, her soot-streaked face glowing softly in the fading light. Landon watched them a long while before finally walking over. You two make this look easier than I remember, he said quietly. Rachel glanced up, squinting into the light. It's easier when you're not trying to control the whole forest. He chuckled, kneeling beside them. Fair point. He pressed his hands into the soil, the gesture oddly grounding. When I built Sierra Link, I thought control meant safety. But last night, he paused, exhaling slowly. It was the first time I realized control isn't the same as protection. Rachel's expression softened. You learned that from a kid and a kite. Yeah, he said with a faint smile, and from the woman who never stopped doing the right thing, even when it broke her heart. She froze for a beat, not expecting the rawness in his tone. The wind lifted a lock of her hair, and she looked down quickly, brushing soil from her gloves. You always had a way with words. Landon shook his head. Not last night, not when it mattered. Before she could answer, Eli piped up, holding a young pine upright. Can someone hand me the water jug? Landon reached for it, pouring a careful stream over the soil. There, he said. Strong roots need a little help getting started. Eli nodded with solemn focus. Then I'll come back and check on this one every week. You do that, Landon said softly. We'll come with you. Rachel glanced at him, catching the quiet promise layered in those words. We? He met her gaze steadily. If you'll let me try. The wind carried the faint, rhythmic sound of helicopters in the distance, media crews circling the burn scar for aerial footage. Landon's phone buzzed again. He silenced it without looking. Rachel noticed. You're going to have to face them sooner or later. I will, he said, but not before I face this. His eyes shifted toward Eli, who was now helping a firefighter tie small red ribbons around each newly planted tree, temporary markers for reforestation mapping. Rachel followed his gaze, her voice softening. He's stronger than he knows. He's curious, kind, stubborn. Everything good I remember about you, without the distance. That caught him off guard. You think he got that from me? I think he got more than just your eyes, she said quietly. He turned toward her fully, the afternoon light catching the blue in his irises. Then I'd like to earn the rest. Rachel's reply was interrupted by the crackle of a radio. One of the firefighters called over, Mr. Mercer, County Command wants you at the briefing tent. He nodded. I'll be there in 10. Then he turned back to her, lowering his voice. After that, we need to make everything official. You, me, and Eli. I don't want his life tangled up in rumors. Her brow furrowed. Official how? A clear plan, he said. A parenting agreement. DNA confirmation for record. Therapy support. Whatever he needs. No courtrooms, no lawyers. Just truth. Rachel's eyes softened. You've already thought this through. Last night, when I saw him standing there with that kite, Landon said quietly, I realized I'd been planning for the wrong kind of legacy. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire had taken much, but it had also stripped away every pretense between them. Then Eli ran up, waving the kite reel like a trophy. They said we can hang it in the relief center. Rachel laughed, brushing his cheek. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Landon crouched to eye level. It belongs there, he said. It's the first flag of the Fireline program. Eli grinned, proud and a little shy. Does that mean I work for Sierra Link now? Landon smiled. Only if you promise to teach us how to be brave. Eli considered that, then nodded solemnly. Deal. As the boy ran ahead toward the tents, Landon straightened. Rachel watched him go, then looked at Landon again. You really mean to make this permanent? Yes, he said simply. The Fireline program, the transparency, everything. But most of all, them. He gestured toward the volunteers, the evacuees, the firefighters, the boy still chasing the wind. We'll rebuild smarter, stronger, cleaner. Sierra Link's done chasing headlines. Rachel gave a small, tired smile. You might finally be becoming the man you were meant to be. He looked at her, the faintest trace of hope in his eyes. And maybe the father, too. Her expression softened, something unspoken flickering between them. One step at a time. Agreed, he said quietly. They turned toward the valley, where the red kite now hung in the relief tent doorway, fluttering gently in the afternoon breeze, a relic of chaos transformed into a symbol of healing. For the first time since the fire began, the air smelled faintly of pine again. By sunset, the valley glowed gold and amber again, as if the land itself was trying to forget the night before. Smoke had thinned to a faint haze. The mountain ridges were silhouetted against a pale, forgiving sky. In the distance, emergency lights blinked like fireflies instead of alarms. Landon stood near the relief tent where the red kite now hung, its fabric patched, tail still stitched with L. Mercer. It moved softly in the evening breeze, no longer a signal of danger, but of endurance. Around it, people moved with new energy, neighbors carrying lumber, teenagers stacking bottled water, volunteers serving stew from a big steel pot. Rachel sat on a bench outside the triage area, her arm around Eli, who was drowsy but still smiling. The boy's eyes followed the kite. "They said they're keeping it there until the new park's built," he murmured. "The firefighter said I'm part of history now." "You are," she whispered, brushing his hair, "and so's that kite." Landon approached, still in his soot-stained shirt, holding 3 paper cups of cocoa from the supply truck. He handed one to Eli, one to Rachel, and sat beside them, his movements careful, almost reverent. "Sweet and lukewarm," he said with a half-smile, "but after last night it tastes like a miracle." Eli grinned sleepily. "You talk fancy." Rachel laughed softly. "He's been talking that way since I met him." Landon's smile lingered, but his gaze shifted to the horizon where black fields stretched toward the foothills. "The fire line funding was approved," he said quietly. "State Emergency Board signed it an hour ago. Open source partnerships, free data flow, community ownership." Rachel looked at him, eyes widening. "They already voted?" He nodded. "Priya delivered the presentation while I was with the county. I gave her one note: make sure they understood this wasn't about Sierra Link's success. It was about the boy who kept the signal alive when everything else failed." Rachel blinked, moved. "You mean Eli?" "I mean the spirit he represents," Landon said softly. "We're naming the network after it, the Red Kite Protocol. It'll mark safe air corridors during fires. Every community can use it, free." Eli's eyes lit up. "Like my kite?" "Exactly like your kite," Landon said. "Only now it'll help thousands more." The boy smiled, proud and sleepy. "Then I'll build a new one, a bigger one." Landon looked at Rachel over his son's head, his voice dropping lower. "He's brilliant, Rachel. You've raised him beautifully." Her throat tightened. "He's all I ever needed." He studied her for a moment, expression unreadable. "You did it alone. I won't pretend I can make up for that. But I'd like to start where we are." She met his gaze. "You mean being part of his life?" "Yes," he said, his voice steady but humble. "No headlines, no cameras, just being there. School projects, tree plantings, the small things." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. The light shifted, warm across her face. Finally, she said, "That's all he's ever needed, too." They sat in silence, watching as volunteers raised lanterns over the relief camp. The soft glow spread like constellations returning to a sky that had gone dark too long. From somewhere down the road, a cluster of Sierra Link drones hummed, landing near a generator truck. Their lights blinked in sequence: green, green, steady blue. Safe. Landon leaned back on the bench, his voice a low murmur. "When I was a kid, my father used to take me hiking up near Estes Park. He said fire was part of the mountain's memory. It burned old roots so new ones could grow." Rachel nodded. "Maybe that's what this was, burning what we couldn't keep. And clearing space for what might still grow," he added. The boy's head dropped against her shoulder, asleep at last. Rachel shifted carefully, tucking the blanket around him. Landon watched, quiet awe in his eyes. "You look like you've been doing that forever," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Feels like it." Then, after a pause, "He has your eyes. Every time he looks at me like that, half curious, half stubborn, I see you." Landon swallowed hard, emotion flickering through his calm exterior. "Then I should thank you. You gave those eyes purpose." They sat that way for a long while, two people who'd been burned by time, learning again how to share quiet without guilt. A soft gust lifted the red kite where it hung at the tent's edge. Its tail shimmered, catching the lamplight, the faint stitches glowing like veins of gold. Landon reached up, fingers brushing the fabric, reverent. He looked at Rachel, voice almost a whisper. "When I left that scarf with you, I thought it was just a gesture, something to remember a night that already felt fleeting. I never imagined it'd come back to save us all." Rachel's gaze softened. "Maybe it was never about the scarf. Maybe it was about remembering what mattered, before everything got complicated. He nodded slowly. Before ambition swallowed the things I couldn't replace. She looked at him, her tone gentler now. Then maybe this time, don't chase the fire. Just stay. He met her eyes, steady, searching, and said simply, I will. The night deepened, filled with quiet sounds, the hum of generators, distant laughter, the whisper of the wind against the hills. Eli stirred in his sleep, murmuring, Did we win? Rachel smiled, smoothing his hair. Yes, baby, we did. Landon leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, watching the red kite sway gently above them. No, he said softly, not correcting, but expanding her answer. We endured, and in that single word, endured, was everything the fire hadn't taken. Their resilience, their forgiveness, and the fragile beginning of something like peace. The next morning, the sky over the Colorado foothills was a clean, washed blue. No smoke, no sirens, only wind moving through the half-burned pines. Dew glittered on the ash-dark soil like tiny shards of light. The valley was quiet, except for the low murmur of volunteers rebuilding fences and the soft hiss of the relief tents coming down. Landon stood by the ridge where the fire had first jumped. His clothes were clean, but his shoes still carried soot. The prestigious watch he'd once worn like armor now hung loosely on his wrist, scratched and smoke-stained. He didn't plan to replace it. Behind him, Rachel and Eli climbed the short trail carrying a small wooden box. Eli's cheeks were pink from the cool morning air, and in his hands fluttered the red kite, its tail now stitched with a second name, E. Hart Mercer. Mom said it should have both, the boy explained shyly. Landon's throat tightened. She's right, he said quietly. That's exactly how legacy works. Shared, not claimed. They reached the ridge crest where the land fell away to a view of the entire valley below. The new saplings they'd planted yesterday were already catching the sun. Hundreds of green shoots in black soil, stubborn proof that the mountain hadn't surrendered. This is where you found us last night, Rachel said, stopping beside him. He nodded. And where I almost lost everything again. She smiled softly. Almost doesn't count. You didn't run this time. He turned to her, blue eyes steady behind the faint smudge of smoke on his glasses. I'm done running. She studied him for a long moment, then opened the wooden box. Inside lay a polished plaque, Fireline Pavilion Dedication, with a small engraving beneath, for those who held the line. The county asked me to help design the new wind garden, Rachel said. They want it here. Your company's funding half of it. He shook his head. Our company, he corrected gently. You and I are signing the Fireline Charter together this week. It's official. She blinked, surprised. You really want that? I do, he said. I meant what I promised. Sierra Link's going open source. The Red Kite Protocol will belong to every county, every town. It's not about control anymore. It's about connection. Rachel smiled faintly. That's a new word for you. It's the only one that matters now. Eli planted the kite reel in the ground and let the string rise. The red fabric caught the updraft, unfurling high above them. For a moment, it hovered motionless, perfectly balanced between mountain and sky. Landon reached for the scarf tail, tracing the old stitches that had survived 8 years and a wildfire. He tied it around a nearby sapling, the bright cloth snapping lightly in the wind. Every program we launch from now on, he said, I want this symbol at its center. The red kite stays in our logo, our field stations, everything. A reminder that human courage comes before technology. Rachel stepped beside him. You don't need a symbol to prove that. He looked at her, voice low. No, but I need a reminder. Of you, of him. Eli called from the slope below, laughing as the kite climbed higher. It's catching the wind again. Rachel smiled, sunlight soft on her face. He'll never see that kite the same way again. Landon's gaze lingered on her profile, Strong, tired, radiant. Neither will I. They stood together in silence as the wind tugged at their clothes, warm and clean. In the distance, the first fireline drones began a gentle ascent, mapping the new tree grid, their hum blending with the sound of morning birds returning. Rachel turned to him. "You'll go back to the city soon?" "Only long enough to sign the contracts," he said. "Then I'm staying here a while, help rebuild, learn how to be present." She raised an eyebrow. "Present?" He smiled, self-aware. "It's a new skill for me, but I've got a good teacher." She laughed softly. "We'll see." Eli ran back up the hill, cheeks flushed, the reel spinning in his hands. "Mom! Mr. Mercer, look, it's flying higher than yesterday." Landon crouched, helping him steady the reel. Together they watched the kite soar until it was a tiny red spark against the wide blue. Rachel leaned on the fence post beside them, eyes misting. "He thinks the sky belongs to him now." Landon looked up, then back at her. "It does, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he never doubts that." The wind carried his words across the valley, soft but sure. Eli's laughter echoed as he danced with the string. The kite's shadow swept briefly across their faces. One motion, 3 silhouettes linked by the same thread. Landon reached for Rachel's hand, fingers lacing gently through hers. "You once told me love isn't proven in grand gestures," he said. "It's proven in staying." Her thumb brushed his wrist. "Then stay." He smiled. "Always." Above them, the red kite shimmered in the bright morning air, its tail, a relic of loss and reunion, fluttering like a heartbeat. Below, the new saplings leaned toward the light, roots pressing deep into the cooling earth. The fire was over. The line held, and somewhere between ash and sky, something lasting had begun.